Good evening from the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Our coverage continues of the upcoming return to Earth of 3 of the crew members who have lived for 6.5 months on board the International Space Station. You are looking live at a picture. You're looking live at a picture of the Soyuz MS-09 spacecraft in the middle of your screen that is docked to the Rassvet module of the International Space Station, the Earth-facing port on the Russian segment of the station. Inside the middle section of that Soyuz and the so-called descent module are the 3 crew members. Soyuz commander Sergei Prokopyev of Roscosmos. Seated to his left is the board engineer number 1, Alexander Gerst, the off-going station commander from the European Space Agency. And on Prokopiev's right, NASA flight engineer Serena Anand-Chancellor. Undocking is scheduled a short time from now, about 54 minutes from now, where the hooks will open on the Soyuz side of the docking interface. Springs on both sides of the docking interface will push off against one another, and physical separation will occur as the Soyuz will back away to a safe distance from the station for its deorbit burn that will result in a landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan at 11:03 p.m. Central Time tonight, 12:03 a.m. Eastern Time. In the last hour or so, a small issue has cropped up with Sergei Prokopiev's communications cable for his Russian Sokol launch and entry suit. As the crew was suiting up in their suits in the descent module, Prokopiev noticed that the communications cable that enables him to talk to the Russian flight controllers in mission control outside of Moscow, as well as the search and recovery forces ultimately on the ground in the landing zone, that communications cable, the connector was broken. So over the past hour, our flight controllers here in Houston and Russian flight controllers have and are continuing discussions about a workaround that appears to be headed towards a solution in which Alexander Gerst, who is fully trained as a Soyuz commander, would be the one in charge of any communications that might be required between the Soyuz and the Russian flight controllers during the descent back to Earth. The flight rules do not call for this to be a showstopper. This is why Gerst is fully trained in the left seat as a Soyuz commander from a technical standpoint. But we are continuing to have discussions to make sure we fully understand how the crew will be able to communicate with one another during the descent back to Earth, and in the event of a contingency of some sort, how Gerst would be able to communicate with the Russian search and recovery forces on the ground. In the meantime, the countdown is continuing towards the undocking on time that will occur about 52 minutes from now, with physical separation expected at 7:40 and 30 seconds p.m. Central Time, 8:40 and 30 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. Again, we do not consider this to be a showstopper, although it has prompted a considerable amount of discussion, as you can imagine, between our flight controllers, our lead flight director for this shift, Royce Renfrew, who is on console here in Mission Control, and his Russian shift flight director counterpart. You can see here, Renfrew is standing up. He is in the process, as we speak even, of talking to the shift flight director at the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Korolyov, so that they can fully understand the procedures that the crew on board the Soyuz vehicle will employ without Prokopiev having direct communications capability with the ground during the hour-long descent back to a landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan. You can see in the white shirt at the top of your screen veteran astronaut Shane Kimbrough, who is, of course, a Soyuz systems expert, having flown on a Soyuz vehicle about a year and a half ago. He is here, as is always the case, for a Soyuz landing, joined by a Soyuz systems specialist for an additional set of expertise that would be employed in deciphering any issue that could crop up with the Soyuz vehicle on the way down. The good news is that the Soyuz has checked out all the leak checks since the hatch closure that occurred back about 4:30 p.m., just over 2 hours ago, when the hatches were closed between the Soyuz and the Rassvet module of the International Space Station. All those leak checks have been completed. We have an airtight seal between the two docking interfaces on the Soyuz and the International Space Station. The crew began to don their suits, and they have just completed leak checks on their Sokol launch and entry suits with no issues reported. So the only outstanding item is this communications cable issue for Prokopiev, which appears to be headed toward a workaround that would have Alexander Gerst fully trained as a Soyuz commander in the left seat, being the prime communicator between the Soyuz and flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center that you see there in this live view from a balcony camera. The International Space Station is currently flying 252 miles over Chile, moving from northwest to southeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. The departing crew of Prokopiev, Anand Chancellor, and Gerst said farewell to their three remaining counterparts on board the station. The new station commander, Oleg Kononenko, David St. Jacques of the Canadian Space Agency, and NASA's Anne McClain. They bid each other farewell at 4:30 p.m. Central Time. The hatches were closed on both sides of the docking interface between the Soyuz and the Rassvet module, and everything is now in readiness from a technical standpoint for the undocking, which is scheduled at 7:40 and 30 seconds p.m. Central Time.
Moscow, Altai 1, I'm ready to report a 5-minute.
Once the Soyuz undocks from the International Space Station, flying under the call sign of Altai, which is the name chosen by Prokopyev as the Soyuz commander for a mountain range in southern Siberia, just as it was between launch and docking for this crew 6.5 months ago. This crew is wrapping up 197 days in space. 195 days on board the International Space Station, a mission that has spanned 3,152 orbits of the Earth and a distance of 83.3 million miles. On the ground at the landing site in Kazakhstan, on the southern steppe of Kazakhstan, the landing site is to the southeast of the remote town of Zhezkazgan, where the Russian search and recovery forces are now awake. They are joined by a team of NASA and European Space Agency officials who are gathered and are embedded in the recovery team that will pick up Prokopyev, Gerst, and Anand Chancellor after they touch down. It is a frosty day on the southern steppe of Kazakhstan. The temperature is about 8 degrees Fahrenheit. It's expected to reach about a temperature of about 11 degrees Fahrenheit at the time of touchdown. The latest weather forecast calls for fairly cloudy conditions. Satellite imagery has shown the landing site with clouds moving to the south, should reach that landing area, making up for at least a broken deck of clouds at landing time. And some brief and very light snow flurries are expected. Yesterday, the search and recovery forces did a fly-around in Russian Mi-8 helicopters of the landing site, reported a half a foot of snow on the ground, but otherwise everything is in order for an on-time landing that would take place at 11:03 and 21 seconds p.m. Central Time tonight, which is 11:03 and 21 seconds a.m. Kazakhstan time on Thursday morning.
Altai is Moscow. We are AOS. What was the pressure reading at 3:52? Okay, one more time. Yes, we need the readings from you for 3:52. We didn't copy all of them. Understood. At 3:52, the SAR pressure was 825, and the blow pressure was 687. Copy. The next measurement should be taken at 3:57. 3:57, copy. Sergey, look, if we go LOS, please write down the readings every 5 minutes, and when we're back AOS, you will report those readings to us. Of course, copy.
The International Space Station is flying into an orbital sunset over the South Atlantic at this hour. Again, a good view right in the middle of the Soyuz MS-09 spacecraft, attached to the Rossviet module with undocking, the undocking command itself scheduled to be issued 43 minutes from now. It will take about 90 seconds for the hooks on the Soyuz side of the docking interface to open up. Springs on both sides of the docking interface will push off against one another, and the Soyuz will be free. Physical separation again scheduled at 7:40 and 30 seconds p.m. Central Time, 8:40 and 30 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. That will be followed about 3 minutes later by the first of two separation burns. First, an 8-second automated burn of the Soyuz thrusters to begin a separation maneuver away from the station. About a minute and a half later, a second 15-second burn will be executed to increase the opening rate between the Soyuz and the International Space Station. The Soyuz will spend about 2 orbits drifting away to a safe distance from the International Space Station for the deorbit burn that is scheduled at 10 10 and 52 seconds p.m. Central Time, 11:10 and 52 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. That will be a 4-minute, 36-second retrograde braking maneuver of the Soyuz engines to slow the vehicle down by 128 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit for its high-speed reentry back into the Earth's atmosphere.
$11, and the bow pressure is 687. Altai, what is the SA pressure? Can you please repeat it? SA pressure is 810. 810. Copy. And VO pressure is 686. Copy.
This is Mission Control Houston, with countdown clocks ticking backward to the undocking command that will initiate the opening of the Soyuz hooks holding the vehicle to the Rassvet module. The Rassvet hooks are already open, so it's just a matter of sending the commands from the Russian Mission Control Center to open up the Soyuz hooks. That's scheduled in about 38 minutes. It'll take about 90 seconds for those hooks to open, and that will set the Soyuz MS-09 free and on its way to a landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan just after 11 p.m. Central Time. Here in the ISS flight control room here at the Johnson Space Center, Flight Director Royce Renfrew continues to discuss with his Russian shift flight director counterpart at the Russian Mission Control Center the procedures that board engineer number 1, Alexander Gerst of the European Space Agency, who is the left seater in the Soyuz, fully trained with all of the operations and communications interaction that goes with the role of a Soyuz commander itself, how Gerst will be communicating with the Russian flight controllers on the ground, and if necessary with the search and recovery forces at the landing zone in Kazakhstan, in the absence of Sergei Prokopyev having the ability to do that same communications because of a broken comm cable connector for his Sokol spacesuit. That is not considered to be a showstopper, and under the flight rules is not required, with Gerst having been trained fully as a Soyuz commander in the sense of having all the communications and interactive capabilities that a Soyuz commander would have in discussing procedures, whether they be nominal or contingency, with the ground during the Soyuz descent back to Earth.
Is 809 and by oil pressure is 687. 687. Copy. And please take the next measurements in 5 minutes. Copy. Altai, Moscow. Go ahead. I have a question. So you understand that we're going to Moscow. This is Altai. Yes, go ahead, Altai. Sergey. We have the following question. You understand that the commander will have issues with comm when visor will be closed. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. We understand it. Are you ready to be in a situation when commander does not have comm with the rest of the crew members when his visor is closed? We are ready. I am ready. Alex will be providing comm, and I will be monitoring everything and using the pointer to communicate if I see any issues. I'm ready. Serena, are you ready? I'm ready.
This is Mission Control Houston. Russian flight controllers talking to Sergei Prokopiev, the Soyuz commander, about the crew's comfort level with Prokopiev not having communications capability during the entry back to Earth because of a broken comm cable on his Sokol launch and entry suit. The crew indicating that they are perfectly comfortable with the communications interactively that they have on board with each other, with Alexander Gerst as board engineer number 1, being able to talk to the Russian flight controllers as well as the search and recovery forces during the descent back to Earth. Here in the ISS flight control room, Flight Director Royce Renfrew is now taking a poll of his flight controllers to get a go, no-go for undocking. The undocking command scheduled 33 minutes from now.
Moscow, this is Altai 1. And I'm ready to report 20 minutes reading. Okay, I'm ready to copy. SR pressure is 809, BO pressure 686.
This is Mission Control Houston. Flight Director Royce Renfrew has polled his flight control team here in Houston. Everybody is go for undocking, despite this communications cable issue that cropped up over the past hour and a half with Sergei Prokopiev's Sokol launch and entry suit. Not a showstopper. We are marching along, proceeding towards an on-time undocking that will send Soyuz MS-09 flying under the call sign of Altai towards a landing on the southern steppe of Kazakhstan, where it is quite cold at this hour. Landing scheduled just after 11:03 p.m. Central Time, 11:03 a.m. Kazakhstan time on Thursday. This is Mission Control Houston. The International Space Station is currently approaching the southern coast of Africa, beginning a track from southwest to northeast that will carry it over Madagascar and over Mumbai, India, a short time from now. This is the final full orbit for this crew of Alexander Gerst, Sergei Prokopiev, and Serena Anand-Chancellor, who launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan back on June 6th on a 2-day journey to the station, docking their vehicle to the Rassvet module on June 8th. They are in the final hours of wrapping up 197 days in space and a journey of 83.3 million miles. If you recall, just 8 days ago, Prokopiev ventured outside of the Pirs docking compartment with Oleg Kononenko, who's the new station commander, to do a bit of forensic surgery on a piece of thermal insulation in the habitation module. That's the upper section that you see in this Soyuz in the center of your picture, the bulbous round section. The habitation module is the uppermost portion of the 3-section Soyuz vehicle that provides avionics, the forward docking probe, and a bit of leg room for the crew members during their time from launch, orbital insertion, and docking to the International Space Station. Back in late August, a drop in pressure in the International Space Station was detected that was traced to a hole in that habitation module. The spacewalk last week by Kononenko and Prokopiev was designed to cut away a portion of that thermal insulation down to the external hull of the habitation module to do a visual inspection. They gathered photographic and video documentation of the area. plus collecting samples of the epoxy sealant that had extruded from the hole. That was part of the repair effort that was undertaken just hours after the pressure leak was detected by Prokopiev and Gerst. This is the video of Kononenko using a cutting tool to cut away some of the thermal insulation in the area correspondent with the internal location of where the hole was found that was traced to the leak that was repaired in quick order by the crew. The pressure has held rock steady in the habitation module since then. No issues whatsoever. Just for situational awareness, the hatch between the habitation module and the center section of the Soyuz, the descent module, where the crew members are strapped inside for entry, just as they were for launch 197 days ago, that habitation module is depressurized just 10 seconds after the deorbit burn is complete, and it is discarded along with the lower section, the propulsion module, the white section where the solar arrays are in the engines, as the vehicle prepares to enter the Earth's atmosphere. There's a pyrotechnic command for module separation that occurs about 28 minutes after the deorbit burn. So that habitation module's job is complete for this mission, and with no further issues associated with it, it is ready to be discarded to allow the crew in the descent module to come home to an on-time landing on the southern steppe of Kazakhstan. The deorbit for the Soyuz vehicle will begin with the undocking that is scheduled at 7:40 and 30 seconds p.m. Central Time. It will move to a safe distance away from the station for the deorbit burn that will be executed, a 4-minute, 36-second retro firing of the Soyuz engines at 10:10 and 52 seconds p.m. Central Time. 28 minutes after the deorbit burn, just before the Soyuz enters the Earth's atmosphere, that is the pyrotechnic separation of the three sections of the Soyuz vehicle. Again, the uppermost section, the habitation module, the lower section, the instrumentation and propulsion module, are discarded. The crew facing the direction of travel with the heat shield repelling and ablating temperatures that will build up to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit around the spacecraft as it heads toward the landing site in southern Kazakhstan. About 15 minutes before touchdown, a series of chutes will be commanded to be deployed. The final chute to be deployed is a huge main parachute that will enable the Soyuz to descend towards its landing site. In just a few seconds off the ground, the braking rockets at the base of the Soyuz spacecraft will fire in a final buffering maneuver to allow the Soyuz to touch down, with landing currently scheduled at 11:03 and 21 seconds p.m. Central Time, 12:03 and 21 seconds a.m. Eastern Time on Thursday.
Infinity setting.
Индикатор курса.
And your angle is set to 180-0.
Down in Zhezkazgan, Kazakhstan, which is about 87 miles to the northwest of the intended landing zone for the Soyuz vehicle, the Russian search and recovery forces, they're called Rosaviatsia, which is the civil aviation agency that handles recoveries of these crews along with other civil aviation work that they do. They are joined by a team of NASA personnel, including flight surgeons and Russian nurses. They are also joined by a similar team of European Space Agency personnel ready to move in Russian Mi-8 helicopters to the landing zone. They will be moving a short time from now from their hotel in Zhezkazgan to the airport in that town. to board the Russian Mi-8 helicopters. They'll be taking off, rotors spinning one by one in sequential fashion for about a 30-minute flight to the landing zone, where they will circle in a racetrack fashion the landing area, waiting for the arrival of the Soyuz under its large main parachute. The current forecast calls for broken clouds with bases at about 1,500 feet, not ideal for viewing of the Soyuz under the chutes today. The visibility is about 6+ miles, winds out of the east-northeast at about 6 knots, peaking to 12 knots. The temperature right now forecast at landing time is about 11 degrees Fahrenheit, with a wind chill factor right around 0 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, copy. And also, where did you connect the ComCap cable? You will need to stow it somewhere and secure it to make sure that it does not obstruct anything. Yes, well, the cable is in such position that it will be extended only slightly when the seats are armed. Okay, copy. And then my second question is as follows. We watched the video, and there is a small piece of MLI that covers the Soyuz camera. So the image will be covered with this material. So you will be monitoring undock and separation using a periscope and also the camera set to wide angle. Okay, copy. We will put it in work. And the image on the periscope is very clear. Copy.
This is Mission Control Houston. We're about 17.5 minutes away from the issuance of the command to open up the Soyuz hooks on the Soyuz side of the docking interface with the Rassvet module on the Earth-facing side of the International Space Station. This view from an external camera on the Soyuz showing the vehicle itself. This may be one view that we have an opportunity to see undocking from, as well as any view that we will get from truss cameras on the International Space Station at the time of physical separation that is scheduled at 7:40 and 30 seconds p.m. Central Time. This is Mission Control Houston. A close-up view now of the Soyuz MS-09 that is docked, at least for the moment, to the Rassvet module on the Earth-facing side of the International Space Station. The station is flying 252 miles over the Indian Ocean, moving from southwest to northeast. On the right, very visible, are the Ultraflex solar arrays on the Northrop Grumman Cygnus cargo craft, recently arrived at the International Space Station. Assuming we have downlink television at the time of undocking, we should get a rather spectacular view of the Soyuz vehicle and its 3 crew members who are soon to return to Earth as it backs away from the Rassvet module for a pair of separation burns that will initiate an opening rate over the next 2 orbits prior to the deorbit burn of 4 minutes and 36 seconds to send the Soyuz out of orbit towards its landing site on the southern steppe of Kazakhstan.
And what is the inaudible? 3-2. 3-2, copy.
This is Mission Control Houston. As we continue to watch the Soyuz MS-09 spacecraft, in the center section of that vehicle are the 3 returning crew members. Soyuz Commander Sergei Prokopyev. The call sign for Soyuz from undocking through landing coming up is the word Altai, which is the name of a mountain range in southern Siberia. The Soyuz commander always selects a call sign for him or herself.
Altai, Moscow.
The International Space Station is approaching the west coast of India, moving from southwest to northeast.
We are ready to execute step 2. We have 5 minutes remaining until transmission is activated.
We are 10.5 minutes away from the issuance of the command to open up the hooks on the Soyuz side of the docking interface with the Rassvet module. The Rassvet hooks were opened about an hour and a half ago. Everything is in order. The only issue that has been worked is a broken communications cable connector for Prokopiev's Soyuz suit that will prevent him from talking directly to the ground while his helmet visor is closed. To alleviate that issue, Alexander Gerst, who is fully trained in the communications protocols and the interaction between a Soyuz commander and the flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov, he will be responsible for talking directly to those folks if required during the descent of the Soyuz back to Earth. It is worth noting that once the deorbit burn occurs, that's scheduled for 10:10 and 52 seconds p.m. Central Time. Again, that'll be a 4-minute, 36-second retrograde firing to slow the Soyuz down, allowing it to drop out of orbit. About 11 minutes after that deorbit burn, when the Soyuz is at a range of some 100 kilometers away from the International Space Station, voice communication through the VHF communication system tends to be choppy and ratty anyway, and sometimes unavailable altogether depending on atmospheric conditions. As the Soyuz makes its way toward the landing site, the communications is typically restored once the Soyuz is within sight of the Antonov 26 fixed-wing aircraft that is a flying command and control center in the landing zone to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. And you can see in this view, as you look at the bottom of your screen, the bulbous portion, which is actually the uppermost section of the Soyuz, the habitation module. If you look on the right, you can see the ragged section of insulation that Oleg Kononenko cut away during his spacewalk back on December 11th with Sergei Prokopyev to reach the external hull of the habitation module, correspondent with the area on the inside where a hole was detected back in late August associated with a pressure decay aboard the station, prompting a repair using an epoxy sealant that extruded through the hole itself, and which samples were collected for return to Earth on this Soyuz and analysis by Russian engineers.
Yes, секунд.
Command is confirmed. Moscow, this is Altai 1.
Московское время.
Moscow time is 4:32.
Включаю передатчик плюс.
I am switching on closed transmitter. Copy. It's on.
Включаю дисплей плюс ТВ.
I am activating display plus TV. Copy. 4:33. Please get ready for the enabling, dynamic modes enabling. Copy.
Я готов.
I'm ready.
Готово.
We are ready.
Камера
The
включена.
camera is on. We do see the crosshairs. Copy.
Я готов.
I'm ready.
И 2 вовремя. 4:33:0.
I'm ready to send the command at 4:33:00. Copy.
Секунд.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Выдал.
I've sent the command.
4:33.
4:33. We've sent the command.
Есть.
Okay, we are checking the telemetry. The carrier parameters are nominal.
1, 1, 2,
1,
3 есть.
2, 1, 3. Confirmed.
Ну, через 3 минуты.
Angular rate sensor 1112. 13 is confirmed. We will be receiving the image shortly, or we are receiving it already.
Да, принято.
Copy all.
Less than 5.5 minutes away from the undocking command. We're just 7 minutes away from physical separation.
KDU стабильно.
Unintelligible.
Принято, КДУ в норме.
Copy. KDU is nominal.
Выдаем с вами команду R7.
Пересвет.
Send the command. Copy.
1 раз, R5.
Yes, 45.
Да. Готовлюсь.
AGC.
Так, пересветку. R7 выдал.
We have sent that command.
Принято.
Copy.
Классно. Вот, все хорошо видно.
Everything is visible.
Один раз нажал.
AGC, I pressed it once.
Видимость очень
The
хорошая.
visibility is great.
Развернул экран.
I've moved the display.
Принято.
Copy.
Так, ну, включаю фару.
Включаем.
We are switching it on.
Фар включен.
The headlight is on.
B2 не горит.
D2 is not illuminated. Copy.
Резерв ССВП не горит. Не горит.
Backup SSOP is not illuminated.
Принято.
Copy.
D2, S6.
D2.
In the center section of that Soyuz vehicle that you're looking at from this view from an ISS truss camera, Sergei Prokopiev, the Soyuz commander, in the center seat, flanked on his left by European Space Agency astronaut Alexander Gerst, the off-going Expedition 57 commander,
Copy.
Serena Aunin, Chancellor of NASA, to Prokopiev's right. Gerst, as board engineer number 1, will have the lion's share of communications responsibilities during this descent because of a communications cable connector issue that cropped up a couple of hours ago with Prokopiev's Sokol launch and entry suit. Not serious enough, however, to impact the undocking that's coming up in just about 4 minutes. At the time of undocking, Expedition 58 will formally begin aboard the International Space Station under the command of Oleg Kononenko, who arrived on board the station just over 2 weeks ago with his 2 crewmates, David St. Jacques of the Canadian Space Agency and Anne McClain of NASA. The 3 of them will remain a 3-person crew for the next 2.5 months until the arrival on March 1st, Baikonur time, of the next trio to fly on Soyuz MS-12. That will consist of Alexei Ovchinin and Nick Hague getting another ride to orbit in the wake of their Soyuz launch abort back on October 11th. They'll be launching this time with Christina Cook of NASA to bring the station back to a full 6-person crew capability.
Altais, 20 seconds, you need to activate SSVP, and your go to send the GS-17 command.
Принято 10.
Copy, 10 seconds.
8.
8, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, press it.
D7 выдал.
I've sent the 7 command.
The Soyuz MS-09 docking mechanism has now been commanded to power up. We're inside a minute until the issuance of the command to open up the Soyuz hooks on the Rosviet module.
GS-8, confirmed.
Готовлюсь, выйдут. D17 вовремя.
I'm ready to send the GS-17 command on time. Copy. Please send this command in 30 seconds.
Я готов. Выйдет.
I'm ready to
D17.
send GS-17 command at 043900. Copy, Alex. Your go.
10 секунд.
Copy. 10 seconds.
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
And the hooks are now driving open. This will take about 90 seconds, at which point the springs on both sides of the docking interface between the Soyuz and the Rosviet module will push off against one another to create the physical separation that will mark the beginning of Expedition 58 on the International Space Station.
Ожидаем распеков.
We are standing by for the undock.
При физическом расхождении объектов контролируйте
Please control mechanical separation.
на поверхности стыка. Как я вам говорил, по камере и по выколу.
Please use both the camera and the video display. Video system. Copy.
Изображение на
We can see
ясное, без
very clear image on the camera without any noise or anything else. We can see everything very well. Copy.
We're standing by for physical separation of the Soyuz MS-09 from the International Space Station, and there it is.
I can confirm the
Undocking confirmed at 7:40 and 30 seconds p.m. Central Time, right on time, as the International Space Station flew 252 miles over southeastern Mongolia.
индикаторный режим погас.
The indicator mode is not illuminated anymore.
Режим ССВП выполнен. Горит.
SSVP mode is illuminated. We can see the docking node. We don't see any debris or anything else on the docking mode. It's clean. Copy.
ГСО 1-2 есть.
GSO 1 and 2 are confirmed.
Принято. Секундомер выпустит.
Copy. Please start the timer.
ГСО вообще она есть, что? Игнат?
Yes. GSO 1 is illuminated. Please start the timer. Sergey.
Секундомер запущен.
The timer is on.
This is Mission Control Houston. You're hearing a conversation between the Russian flight controllers and Korolyov and the crew on board Soyuz MS-09. Again, you're looking at the vehicle now flying free of the International Space Station, undocking, occurring right on time at 7:40 and 30 seconds p.m. Central Time, 8:40 and 30 seconds p.m. Eastern Time, as the station and the Soyuz flew 250 plus miles over southeastern Mongolia.
круговому размеру мишени дальность
Visually,
12 метров.
the range is approximately 12 meters.
Это рано.
Copy.
Сергей Алексеевна, ну ладно, счастливо.
Sergey, we wish you
Спасибо, Олег.
soft docking. We can see you. Thank you, Oleg. Have a great flight on the ISS. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
And another view of the Soyuz vehicle as it continues to back away from the International Space Station.
Prepare for the first Delta V.
Готовимся.
We are ready. We're getting ready.
Ожидаем.
We're expecting it in 30 seconds.
Принято.
Copy.
Пятнадцать.
15 seconds to go.
10.
10.
Три минуты. Есть работа ДПО.
We confirm depot firing.
The first of two separation burns underway. This is an 8-second burn to increase an opening rate between the Soyuz that now is in a roll program.
I can see the maneuver.
Разворот.
The maneuver is complete. It's a roll maneuver. Copy.
Конец разворота.
The maneuver is complete now.
Есть ГСО.
I confirm GSO, combined GSO.
30 секунд.
The second of the two separation burns will be coming up shortly, a 15-second burn
Second burn.
that will further increase the opening rate between the Soyuz and the International Space Station.
20 seconds.
You're looking down at the snow-covered terrain of far eastern Russia as the Soyuz and the International Space Station soon will begin a northwest to southeasterly track.
3, 2, 1.
Есть работа
We confirm depot firing.
4:44.
The
Second separation burn now underway. This will be a 15-second burn.
10 секунд отработали.
Принято.
10 seconds.
Наблюдаем смещение.
We can see the maneuver.
Хорошо. Есть выключение ДПО.
We confirm that depot is off. 15 seconds.
Принято.
Инструкция. Конец времени.
Copy.
Есть.
Принято.
Copy all, guys.
Надув не горит, акселерометр не горит, надув не горит.
We can see that we can see the maneuver. Confirm it.
Бдусы не горят. Акселерометр не горит.
The accelerometers and the angular rate sensor units are not illuminated. Copy.
Алтай, Попумар.
Altai is Moscow.
Заключительным операциям.
You're going to
Страница.
perform the closeout steps.
Passed out of range of our downlink TV capability here momentarily. We should be regaining that a short time from now. You're looking at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov. Once again, undocking occurring at 7:40 and 30 seconds p.m. Central Time, 8:40 and 30 seconds p.m. Eastern Time.
In work.
Команду 11.
We are sending.
Undocking occurring over southeast Mongolia.
Отключаем ССВП Д8.
We are deactivating.
Soyuz MS-09, Prokopiev, Gerst, and Anand Chancellor now flying free of the International Space Station, which is now under the
One is illuminated.
moniker of Expedition 58 and
I've
Station Commander Oleg Kononenko.
D8
Принято.
and SSVP is off. It's confirmed. Copy.
В-18.
D18 has been just sent.
Хорошо.
Copy, Alex. Thank you.
Пару выключить.
The headlight is off.
Рут убираем в транспортное положение.
And we are switching the translational hand controller to the stow position.
Фары выключен.
The headlight is off. I confirm that. Thank you, Alex.
Алекс, зафиксируй, пожалуйста.
Alex, please secure this.
Давление в шарбаллонах.
The spherical pressure tank
Во втором. Количество топлива.
is 161 and 169 accordingly. The amount of prop is 476 and we are ready to send the gap 4 command on your go.
Great image of the Soyuz MS-09 flying just over the limb of the Earth, over the Sea of Okhotsk.
Принято.
Copy all.
Everything is in great shape on board. The recovery team, the search and recovery forces, Rosaviatsa, of the Russian search and recovery teams, along with NASA and European Space Agency personnel, will be making their way soon to the airport in Zhezkazgan, where they'll begin to board Russian Mi-8 helicopters to head toward the landing zone, which is about 87 miles to the southeast of Zhezkazgan. The temperature is hovering around the 10-degree Fahrenheit mark this morning, which is Thursday morning over in Kazakhstan.
It's confirmed it's off. We are sending gap 4 command right now.
Время выдачи команды 4:48:40.
The time when we sent that command is 4:48:40. Moscow. Altai, how copy?
На связи, слушаю.
We read you loud and clear, guys.
Да, принято.
Copy all.
Мы появились просто.
We started hearing some noises.
Мы готовы работать по странице.
And we are ready to go to page 48.
Принято, да?
Copy all. We confirm that. All ties.
Работаем по странице 40.
We are on page 48. Work prep, step 1.
Рано.
У вас включение акселерометра.
Accelerometers are off
6 часов 08, 10.
at 6:08:10. So you do still have some time, guys.
Хорошо,
Copy all.
скажите тогда по времени, когда.
Please warn us like 5 minutes in advance. Yes, we will give you a heads up, guys. Okay, copy. Altai, Moscow.
На связи.
Go ahead.
Ставки на спуск заложены.
The descent setbacks have been
Surely, as the seconds pass away, the Soyuz MS-09 and its 3 occupants moving steadily away from the International Space Station.
Copy.
We are just over 2 hours away from the deorbit burn that will begin the Soyuz's descent back to Earth, and just over 3 hours away from its intended landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan, about 87 miles to the southeast of the remote town of Zhezkazgan. The landing scheduled just after 11:03 p.m. Central Time, 12:03 a.m. Eastern Time.
Yes, we do see the required setbacks. Yes, go ahead. Set points. Go ahead.
Предлагаю сейчас в экипаже обсудить ваше взаимодействие.
Our proposal to you is to start discussing your interaction among each other. You can release the button for 5 or 10 minutes and discuss your next steps all together. And after that, please press the COM button again, and we will continue our reports. Okay, copy.
As the Soyuz moves away from the International Space Station, the next order of business for the 3 crew members on board will be a bit of free time as they review their descent procedures that will take place following the deorbit burn that's coming up in 2 hours and 17 minutes. It takes about 2 orbits of the Earth for the Soyuz to move away from the vicinity of the International Space Station for its deorbit burn. That is scheduled at 10:10 and 52 seconds p.m. Central Time, 11:10:52 Eastern Time. As we watch the Soyuz MS-09 departing from the International Space Station en route to a landing, just over 3 hours from now on the steppe of Kazakhstan, we have a social media question that's come into us from the Great Kid at #AskNASA. The question, what's next for Expedition 57 and its crew after they've returned to Earth? So the landing that's scheduled a few hours from now will be followed by the crew being brought into a nearby medical tent that will be erected at the landing site so that they can get out of their Sokol launch and entry suits and into more comfortable flight clothing. They'll undergo initial medical exams. They'll be placed in Russian helicopters for a short flight from the landing site to the staging city of Zhezkazgan, after which they'll split up with Russian cosmonaut Sergei Prokopyev boarding a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft for a flight back to his home in Star City, Russia, outside of Moscow. Serena Aunin, Chancellor of NASA, and Alexander Gerst of the European Space Agency will board a NASA jet that will be in Zhezkazgan to fly to Bodo, Norway for a refueling stop. It will be in Bodo that Gerst will disembark and move on to an European Space Agency aircraft that's been pre-positioned there to fly back to the European Astronaut Center in Cologne, Germany. Aunin, Chancellor, with her support personnel, will return to Houston. continuing to receive downlink television from one of the truss cameras on the International Space Station. The Soyuz MS-09 vehicle under the call sign of Altai. Sergei Prokopyev in the middle seat, the commander's seat of the descent module, the centermost section of the three-section Soyuz spacecraft, flanked on his left by Alexander Gerst, on his right by Serena Aunen-Chancellor, flying free from the station for the first time since the vehicle docked to the Rosviet module back on June 8th. The crew in the home stretch of a 197-day mission. Alex Gerst wrapping up his second long-duration flight, and at the time of landing, just 3 hours from now, we'll have logged 362 days in space, almost a full year, more than any other European Space Agency astronaut in history. About 2 weeks ago, he eclipsed the previous mark for most days in space by European Space Agency astronaut of 350 days, set by Thomas Reiter.
So when cabin pressure stabilizes, do you think it will make sense to open the visor, or I should keep it closed? Sergey, we understand it perfectly. We don't have that recommendation for you yet. Okay, I understand. We will work nominally in accordance with our timeline, and we have just tested it. We can hear each other even when our visors are closed, so we're really hopeful about it.
Copy.
Sergei Prokopyev telling Russian flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center that even with visors closed, the crew on board can talk to each other and hear each other quite clearly. That's good news as the crew tests its communications and interactive capabilities in the wake of a cable connector problem that Prokopyev had with his Sokol launch and entry suit.
Correct. Alex will do that. Alex, please go over the reports, the words. Okay, well, I reviewed that. I will be reporting on everything. And we will be expecting to get barometric pressure readings from you at each 100 meters interval. Okay, copy. Okay, Alex.
Meanwhile, as you can hear from this conversation, Alexander Gerst in the left seat of the Soyuz descent module as board engineer number 1. Basically, the backup, if you will, with the same level of training and skills as a Soyuz commander, in charge of the interactive communications with the Russian flight controllers on the ground, with Prokopyev continuing to monitor Soyuz systems and talking to his 2 crewmates that are flanking him.
And I think that he can see it. Yes, I confirm. Okay, copy. Alex? Could you please go to page 59 in your descent procedures? Page 59. Page 59 is open. You said you will have to establish communications with the search and rescue services, and you will have to report on crew health status, on the type of descent, and also the ballistic offset or ballistic miss value. Okay, I copy all. I will be providing my commentary. Okay, copy. Ignat, one more question. On settings display, there are Soyuz entry control system settings, but the time is designated with the stars and star asterisk signs, and the landing angle is here. We have it. Well, we currently don't have the data for now. That's why it is not in your procedures. But I will give you all the settings. Copy. And dynamic mode enable time will be done via KRL. Okay. Copy. Excellent.
This is Mission Control Houston. Just to recap, you're continuing to watch the Soyuz MS-09 vehicle move away from the International Space Station after its undocking that occurred on time at 7:40 and 30 seconds p.m. Central Time about 25 minutes ago. That was followed in short order by a pair of thruster firing separation burns of 8 and 15 seconds respectively to initiate an opening rate for the Soyuz away from the International Space Station. The station now has begun Expedition 58 under the command of Oleg Kononenko. On board the Soyuz, Sergei Prokopiev, flanked on his left by Alexander Gerst, and on his right by Serena Aunen-Chancellor, moving to a safe distance away from the station for the deorbit burn that is scheduled just over 2 hours from now at 10:10 and 52 seconds p.m. Central Time, 11:10:52 Eastern Time. That will be a 4-minute, 36-second braking maneuver to slow the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit for its descent back into the Earth's atmosphere. About 10 seconds after the completion of that deorbit burn, the upper portion of the three-section Soyuz vehicle, the habitation module, that has been the focus of so much attention since a hole was discovered in it back in late August that caused a pressure decay in the station before a repair was effected. That habitation module will be depressurized in advance of the pyrotechnic separation of the three sections of the Soyuz. The descent module is the only section that re-enters the Earth intact for a parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan. Another social media question coming in from Eric Moore as you look at a view of the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow. How fast and how long does it take to get back to Earth after leaving the space station? So the bottom line is, with the undocking at 7:40 p.m. Central Time, the deorbit burn occurs about 2 hours and 40 minutes later, and it takes just under an hour after the deorbit burn for the Soyuz to touch down on the southern steppe of Kazakhstan. So about 3 hours and 40 minutes or so, 3 hours and 3.5 hours roughly. The Soyuz descends at a rapid pace through the upper reaches of the Earth's atmosphere before its parachutes are deployed 15 minutes before touchdown. That dramatically slows its descent. In fact, for the parachute deployment, it occurs in a sequential fashion. The command that will be issued to deploy the chutes occurs at an altitude of 6.5 miles above the Earth. It is scheduled at 10:49 Central Time, 11:49 p.m. Eastern Time. 2 pilot parachutes are first deployed, the second of which extracts a drogue chute. The drogue chute is then released. That slows the Soyuz down from a descent rate of 230 meters per second to just 80 meters per second. That's followed in short order by the release of the main parachute. It's a huge orange and white chute that covers an area of 1,000 meters. It slows the Soyuz to a descent rate of 7.2 meters per second. First, the harnesses on the chute allow the Soyuz to descend at a canted angle of about 30 degrees to expel any residual heat from reentry. Then the Soyuz is shifted to a straight vertical descent for the firing of braking rockets called soft landing engines just a couple of feet off the ground to complete the descent back to Earth. And for those just tuning in, it was just 30 minutes ago that the Soyuz MS-09 undocked from the Rassvet module following the opening of the hooks, holding it to the Rassvet module. The undocking occurring at 7:40 and 30 seconds p.m. Central Time, 8:40 and 30 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. As you can see, the Soyuz vehicle with the crew strapped in their respective seats in that center section. The upper section, which is actually at the bottom of this view of the Soyuz, the habitation module, and the section at the top with the solar arrays, that's the instrumentation and propulsion module. Those two sections pyrotechnically separate from the descent module 28 minutes after the deorbit burn that will be coming up less than 2 hours from now. The only section that survives reentry is that center section. The heat shield will be flying in the direction of travel toward the landing site through the atmosphere. The heat shield ablates the effects of the entry into plasma in the upper regions of the atmosphere, with heat building around the descent module to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. After the crew descends out of the plasma regime, the heat shield is jettisoned. That exposes an altimeter and the soft landing engines at the base of the descent module for the remainder of its ride down to the landing site, and a parachute-assisted landing that is scheduled at 11:03 and 21 seconds p.m. Central Time, which will be 11:03 and 21 seconds a.m. Kazakhstan time on Thursday morning. This is Mission Control Houston. You're looking at a view of the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Korolyov. It has been about 35 minutes since the undocking of the Soyuz MS-09 spacecraft and its 3 occupants, the off-going Expedition 57 crew from the Rosviet module of the International Space Station. They are flying free and moving to a safe distance away from the station for the deorbit burn that will begin their trip back to Earth. That's scheduled just under 2 hours from now. The weather forecast at the landing site calls for broken clouds at about 1,500 feet. Not pristine visibility today for landing. Winds out of the east-northeast at about 6 knots, peaking to 12 knots. The temperature at landing is expected to be about 11 degrees Fahrenheit with a wind chill factor of about -3 degrees Fahrenheit, so it will be quite chilly for the crew once they are extracted from their spacecraft and put in chairs nearby to get a few minutes of orientation back to Earth's gravity before being brought into a nearby medical tent to get out of their launch and entry suits and into more comfortable clothing. We'll talk more about the actual landing and the aftermath of landing for this crew when we come back on the air at 9:45 p.m. Central Time, 10:45 p.m. Eastern Time, with our coverage of deorbit burn, landing, and all the post-landing activities at the landing site here on NASA television. Again, the deorbit burn scheduled at 10:10 p.m. Central, 11:10 p.m. Eastern. Landing schedule less than an hour later to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan, Kazakhstan, at 11:03 p.m. Central Time, 12:03 a.m. Eastern Time. It will be 11:03 a.m. in Kazakhstan on Thursday morning. So that'll wrap up our coverage of the undocking of the Soyuz and its 3 crew members from the International Space Station. We'll see you again in about an hour and a half with our deorbit and landing coverage on NASA television beginning at 9:45 p.m. Central Time, 10:45 p.m. Eastern Time. This is Mission Control Houston.